All right, I think we are up and running. Welcome everyone to the second session of the Learning with Lovin series, Choosing Your Business Partners. I'm Abbey Niezgoda. I'm a reporter for NBC Boston and also a member of Friends of Lovin Spoonfuls. I am joined today by several just amazing, incredible panelists. I cannot wait for you to meet them. They've got a lot to share with you. I'll give you a quick rundown. We've got Mia Alvarado. She's the Executive Director of Roxbury Youthworks, which is one of our Lovin Spoonfuls nonprofit beneficiaries. We also have Lucy Darragh. She's the Director of Corporate Citizenship over at Blue Cross Blue Shield. Lucy was at the forefront of the company's COVID-19 response, which is fascinating. That included partnering with Lovin Spoonfuls. We also have Kiera Penpeci. She's the founder and principal consultant of Primed OD, which is an organizational development collective rooted in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Kiera is also Lovin Spoonfuls DEI consultant. And finally, last but not least, we have Ashley Stanley. She's the Lovin Spoonfuls founder and executive director. So a reminder to any of you who are out there watching live, maybe you didn't join us for the first one, this is how this is gonna work. I'm the moderator, I'm gonna ask some questions. And if you have any questions at home, for our panelists today, we're going to try to cover those at some points throughout our program. So use the chat box. We want you to engage. Our first session was the business of doing good on launching nonprofits. Our hope for all Learning with Lovin sessions is to impart some professional advice for you guys at home, to bring people together virtually at a time when so many of us are just sitting at home like I am in my living room, evaluating what's important to us, thinking about new opportunities, and growing ourselves professionally. So we're going to get right to the theme because it's a beautiful night and I'm just surrounded by sunshine. Hopefully you can see it bouncing off my face, but I'm also just so excited and pumped to talk about this topic. So we're going to start with Ashley. Tell us about tonight's theme, why you chose, choosing your business partners, what got the wheels turning in your head and what got you thinking about it. Why is it important?
Friends, so good to see everybody. Abby, always good to see you. Fellow panelists, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here and everybody who's joining us tonight. So one of the things I think we hear about so often, really in any space, but particularly for nonprofit, is the importance of collaboration and partnership. And when you do that, at least for us in our experiences at Lovin Spoonfuls, it's really important to be strategic about what that means and what that does. And so tonight, I think our collection of panelists really represent what it means for Lovin Spoonfuls to be successful both internally and externally, and why do we choose the partners that we have.
Absolutely. Lucy, let's start with you. You're over at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts. You both partner with nonprofits like Lovin Spoonfuls as well as fun nonprofits such as Roxbury Youthworks. In what ways do those partnerships support your business objectives?
Yeah, thanks for asking, and so happy to be here. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to join you. So, right, I work at Blue Cross, and we are we are sort of a hybrid organization where we are a nonprofit health plan. So we operate partially like a nonprofit and partially like a business in kind of this in-between space. And in that way we pay taxes. So it's similar to sort of what some of our businesses do. But like a nonprofit, we're guided by a mission, and our mission is to provide affordable, high quality healthcare to our members. I would say through our corporate citizenship work, our goal is to sort of expand that to look at the health and health outcomes of all Massachusetts residents, whether they're our members or not, and especially vulnerable populations. And we do that by partnering with nonprofits and supporting their mission, whether it's through financial investments, as you said, or leveraging the time and talent of our colleagues to volunteer. And that meets our overall business goals of sort of achieving that mission, if you will. I think on a more granular level, besides sort of that big picture piece, the power that happens when we see our colleagues connect with nonprofits and leaders at nonprofit and learn from them is really profound. And we know it's one of the ways that our colleagues want to decide to stay at Blue Cross and what attracts them to working with us. So that learning between nonprofits and our colleagues is really important.
That's awesome. You guys are all uniquely qualified to be a part of this discussion. So I'm going to have you, the others, share a little bit about where you're from as well throughout the questions. Mia and Kiera, I'm looking at you, but I want to get into a broad discussion just about partnership generally. And I'm hoping you guys can weigh in on this because I think it applies to just all aspects of life, not just nonprofits and business. I mean, how do you identify a good partner, practically speaking? How do you decide who you want to work with, whether you're just starting off in a business venture or maybe you've been at this thing for a while, like Ashley?
I'm happy to start and just sort of start us and give the connection of who's here in the room. I think for Spoonfuls and to be concise about it, but really to draw the connections here. You know, Lovin Spoonfuls has been working with me and Roxbury Youthworks now for years, and we were connected by an organization that was supporting us as sort of a fiscal agent when we started. So as a very young, early startup. And as we were looking for partners and beneficiaries, this organization said, hey, there's this other organization doing great work. They could use your service. And it was a very organic way that was born. And so I think that's a great representation of what that looks like. As a nonprofit, we also need funding. We need strategic help. And what Lucy was talking about, the ability to leverage talent and perspective from staff and organizations like Blue Cross not only benefit us in a financial way, but at the same time, they help us take on creative and strategic sort of endeavors and efforts. And we saw that all throughout COVID. And then lastly, but certainly not least, I have always been a firm believer that you cannot bring something into the world that you don't cultivate internally. And being a strong, resilient, and self-aware team is something that we all need as humans right now. And it's something we all need to be focused on as businesses. And that's where Kiera's work is so important in finding people who really understand just how important that is and how to bring that into really the fabric of an organizational culture. That's how we got connected with Kiera. And that's really what we're doing sort of internally so we can bring something externally.
Yeah, Kiera, as Ashley shared, you are a consultant. You're working with Lovin Spoonfuls, among other organizations you contract with, to better incorporate the principles of diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-racism in their day-to-day. From your perspective, I mean, what role do consultants play in this whole choosing your business partners conversation and helping businesses really achieve their goals?
Yeah, good question. And hi, everyone. So happy to be here. And, thanks for including DEI into the conversation, which is, top of mind for many leaders and organizations right now. But, one benefit I think of working with an external consultant in this work is that, my perspective will always be coming from, my various experiences outside of Lovin Spoonfuls. So, I work with companies large and small, for profit, nonprofit, and that lends me a view into what's working and what's not, and what's truly a best practice. And, where, customization is key. Like, what do I need to do that's, specific to the culture at LS? And so, as a consultant, I have a unique opportunity to help organizations avoid common mistakes. And, one of the most common right now in the area of DEI is the idea that, once we've, done all these trainings and, we're training hearts or changing hearts and minds regarding, issues like racial equity and, tackling bias, that we should see an immediate impact. But having conducted, hundreds of interviews, with employees over the years, I know that knowledge isn't enough. People want tools to, continue to help aid in cultural shifts. So, one example with LS specifically is that, we had just done a unconscious bias training. So we have in front of our minds, the knowledge that, mitigating bias in the interview process is vital, to our success. But we're also taking it further by, creating the processes that, create accountability measures that remove bias as well. So it's, multi-pronged always.
Gotcha. And I definitely want to delve a little deeper into that, hoping that people also have some questions in our chat box. A reminder, it's there and we are watching if you have any questions. But Mia, I know you're out there and hopefully you can give everybody a wave. I hear your organization has also partnered in a number of meaningful ways with Blue Cross Blue Shield. You're also a nonprofit beneficiary of Lovin Spoonfuls, of course. So can you tell us about how you and your organization, Roxbury Youthworks, partners with others to achieve its mission? Because that's a big part of choosing your partners.
Sure. I also want to thank Ashley and the Lovin Spoonfuls team for inviting me here and for helping us feed our youth and families for over 6 years. I mean, no one nonprofit can do the work by themselves. we really rely on our community partners. Now, Roxbury Youthworks, Inc., we call ourselves RYI, has been in the communities of Roxbury and Dorchester for almost 40 years. We have offices, programs in Chelsea and Roslindale. So it's important for us to support and partner with community agencies. And we're a minority business, a minority nonprofit. So we're always looking to support other MBEs. Over 90% of the youth that we serve identify as people of color. So we need partners who look like our youth and who support and work for racial and social justice, that live our values, that personify what's important to us: respect and understanding and integrity and quality relationships, social justice, and most importantly, love and caring for those that we serve. We work with an incredibly vulnerable population. We work with young people who have been victims of commercial sexual exploitation, sexual assault, partner violence, who identify as LGBTQ+. And we need partners who understand who our youth are and don't judge them. We also work with young people who've committed juvenile crimes as juveniles. So we don't need anybody to judge our youth harshly. We want partners who unconditionally accept them the way that we do.
Yeah, how easy is it to find partners like that? How do you tell, like, this is the right person, or maybe this is the wrong person?
So you go to the people that you already trust and that you know, and you ask them who they're working with. You know, if I have an unmet need, then, you know, I have a large network of people that I can call on to find someone who understands us and can match us with the right partner.
Gotcha. What do you think about that, Kiera, as somebody, you know, from your perspective, how important is it to ensure your partners are diverse, broadly speaking, and how can you tell when maybe you have some work to do?
Right. Yeah. It's something I think about all the time. So, you know, I think the first thing in identifying, you know, who's going to be a good partner is, you know, exhibiting care for me as a person, and care for our relationship. And also, you know, showing some personal introspection. So, you know, sometimes, you know, I am delivering a proposal for, you know, trainings or, you know, projects, you know, to, you know, create processes, you know, in organizations. And, you know, the person that I'm working with, you know, there's a barrier sometimes, you know, if you know, they also kind of need the training right away in order to even get through that barrier to deliver it to their whole employee base. So, you know, that tells me right away, you know, it's going to be a challenge, and, you know, maybe the time is not now. You know, there's still some buying that needs to happen, and I'm not there to provide the buy-in necessarily. So I, you know, I have developed somewhat of a zero tolerance policy for, for, I'll just say, jerks. And, you know, I'm serious about that. I think that, you know, if you have the ability to turn down, you know, clients or partners who trigger you in any way, or, you know, are not behaving with the integrity that they're expressing is, you know, their values. You know, I think we should be normalizing that and be comfortable saying, you know what, I don't want to work with this person. And, you know, and I say that with the utmost understanding that, you know, not everyone has the privilege to turn down work. You know, we just sometimes can't do that. But if we can, you know, we shouldn't be, you know, partnering just for money or just for, you know, some sort of value, if it's not a respectful relationship.
Yeah, you bring up a good point about just in this new world, you know, some of us can't turn down work, but it's also just changing the way we network and the way we interview and the way we're doing this virtual event tonight. So One question from our panelists that I want to kind of switch gears and talk about is from, or not for our panelists, not from our panelists. This is from Christy Wright. She is a food rescue coordinator for Lovin Spoonfuls. Hi, Christy. Glad you're with us. She's wondering how you all see the future of networking evolving in a post-COVID world. Many pre-COVID networking opportunities were in person, but we now know it's not the only option. How is the networking world changing? Anyone want to take that? Lucy, I know you're out there.
Yeah, I can try, sure. I think that, I would say that there have been so many learnings that we've had from this experience. I've actually been working virtually for the last 15 months, which I never thought I would be able to do, and had to do, and it has had its pros and cons, right? The biggest challenge for me in my role is that I don't meet new employees ever, and we are a company of 3,700 people, and the time that I would spend meeting folks in the line in the cafeteria, or waiting for an elevator, or visiting a building where I don't work was really meaningful, as I'm trying to figure out what are the right opportunities that nonprofits are presenting to us where they might need volunteer support, and how could we fill those needs, especially around some of our skills-based programs. And when I don't know people, it's really hard to make those connections. And I think what I have tried to start doing is just being more visible and inviting myself to other divisions meetings and other divisions activities, and sort of asking folks, do you guys do like a happy hour? Are you doing something after work virtually? Can I like crash it? So that's helped me a lot internally. I think externally, most conferences, most events have all transitioned to a virtual platform and have built in opportunities for networking as part of them, as it may have been if you went to a conference or you were able to participate in a development opportunity like that, where there may have been, between this session and that session, there's going to be 15 minutes of forced networking or optional networking. I think I've seen a lot of that happen virtually, and I think it's something that you just have to push yourself to do if you're not sort of inclined. I'm an introvert actually, and don't love those sorts of opportunities and experiences, but really kind of force myself to do it, because I think there's obviously such a value in being able to know who do you connect with and who do you not, and building on what Kiera was saying around just making sure that you feel respected in those conversations, and that then I feel like I can kind of broker a connection. I want to be really thoughtful about how to do that. The other thing that I would just say is sort of, so one thing that we do is provide funding for organizations. And I think it's really important for folks in my position to really be mindful of that dynamic, and really encouraging nonprofits to think about funders as partners and people that you can turn down. Again, building on what Kiera was saying, that is definitely something that folks should do and think about how to do in the right way. I know everyone is looking for funding, but you shouldn't let that drift cause any sort of mission drift. I think we had a situation with that with Lovin Spoonfuls, actually, where we worked on a partnership through COVID, where Lovin Spoonfuls stepped up for us in a major way and helped us deliver 1,000 meals a day to nonprofits around the greater Boston and South Shore area, where we brought in some of our cafeteria workers who'd been furloughed. I brought them back in and asked them to prepare meals that we were then able to donate, but we had a gap in how are we actually going to get these meals to the organizations and to partners like Mia who needed them to get them to the folks whom they were serving. And what I loved about that was the program went really well. It was super successful, but Lovin Spoonfuls and the team was really clear with us about saying, we're not going to be able to do this after July 31st. We've got other things. This is our capacity. This is what we can do. This is how long we can manage this program. And I kept thinking, I wonder if they'll let us keep doing it through August, or maybe we can get it to September. And I'm so grateful that they continued to work so well with us, and we were really clear about stopping at the end of July. So it was a great decision that they knew what they were able to commit to and what they were able to deliver on well. And and that aspect of our partnership ended then. But it was a really great, I think, reminder for me that really needing to be respectful and cognizant of what our nonprofit partners are being asked to do and how challenging collaboration is in general within an organization, and especially across organizations, that takes time and caring and nurturing and commitment and all of that. And, it's not something to be taken lightly, but as a funder, I really appreciate the transparency that our nonprofits are willing to share with us.
Absolutely. Ashley, do you want to talk about that at all? I mean, it sounds like you were like, hey, we can do this, but we can't do that. And that kind of conversation seems really important when choosing your partner and choosing the right partner.
It's important. And I think one of the things that I've learned and that we as an organization have learned over the last 11 years, and Kiera had mentioned, the concept that it's a privilege to be able to turn down work. It's a privilege to be able to turn down funding. And let's be clear and let's be honest. While I'm a member of the LGBT plus community, I am a white cisgendered female without a background here. So I didn't come in with any idea of I need to play by X rules, which is a privilege in itself. So as I looked at the landscape and started to understand what the larger objectives for Lovin Spoonfuls were going to be, and as they've continued to evolve, it's been front of mind at all times to work with partners who support not just what we want to do it, but how we want to do it. And it's something that we talk about ad nauseum in the organization, both internally, and I think I've given like 4 or 5 talks with the same title, that it's not what you do, it's how you do it. But the idea really is to be able to say, we need to have partners who are going to support our end user in the most direct way possible. So our partnership with Blue Cross, those are the kind of partners we want. And I think being able to say to a funder and have an honest and transparent conversation and say, listen, this is what it's going to take to get this project done, or to make sure that we can do this in a way that honors your funding, what our end user needs, and our staff. Our team suffered an incredible amount emotionally, physically, just weathering the day-to-day. And Mia, I'm sure that you can relate to this, as most companies did, but this year took an emotional toll that I don't think anybody not just wasn't prepared for, but knew how to prepare for, and to continue to sort of nurture and support each other internally. And so being able to have those honest and transparent conversations are incredibly important. And one of the things that I think we've seen, me and Lucy, you can tell me if you both agree here, that we saw a new sort of frontier for unrestricted funding, which was the ability to have those transparent conversations and say, this is what we need to do. Here's how we need to do it. Can you as a funder support us in that without dictating either your own objectives or projects that you want to see? And I think that's really where the trust came in sort of a multi-tentacled way to say, how do we start recovering from this this chaotic mess that was COVID, and how do organizations really start to be intentional about how to move forward?
I absolutely agree with that. COVID was brutal, has been brutal on our staff, on our young people. I mean, our approach to our work is through mentoring, intensive mentoring. We meet with our young people 2 to 3 times a week. And to not be able to do that, to physically hold our young people, to have them in our spaces and keeping that sense of community together while the staff were dealing with their own, medical issues, family issues, that type of stuff, was hard. Yet at the same time, foundations, individuals approached us to fund us that we didn't have an existing relationship with. And I don't know how they found us or why they decided to support Roxbury Youthworks, but it was an unbelievable blessing and opportunity for us. We're 95% funded by state contracts with DYS, the Department of Youth Services, with the Department of Children and Families, with the Mass Office for Victim Assistance. So sometimes it's hard to have conversations about what we can't do. And also what I can say is at times there was an absence of guidance. And Lucy and I were talking about this a little bit before we got started, having to make decisions about whether the staff is in the office, whether they're visiting our young people, was really hard. Ashley, I know as a leader, you had to make the same hard decisions, and we weren't getting guidance from our state partners. So taking some risks was absolutely necessary.
Yeah, are there some ways you guys partnered with others to specifically support your teams and their needs during COVID? And what are you going to carry over now that we got that big announcement this week, the next phase of reopening, maybe a return to normal and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to keep taking the floor here, so I'll step up and then back for a second. But I think the confusion was sort of for everybody, right? There was a different mandate coming out every week, and for us, we were trying to deal with, not only business reopenings, but understanding how many folks can we have in a truck, how many folks can we have in the office, and for us, it was incredibly important to make sure that our entire team was supported. So our senior leadership team, we rotated in and out of the office so that when our FRCs came home at the end of the day, I say home, it's really back to the office. Nobody else thinks of it as home, and they should not absolutely think of their work as home, but came back to the office and they weren't alone. And I think that was the piece where we really started to say, if we are going to get through this, it's going to be together. There needs to be solidarity at every level of the organization. And I think the biggest investment that we've made, or where we want the biggest investment to be, is our work with Kiera. I think that was incredibly important for us to be able to say internally, there is a lot happening in the world from multiple points of light and multiple points of darkness, and how do we figure out how to get through this? We're not going to do it if we're not self-aware, if we're not connected, if we're not hearing each other. And so the work itself, the model is going to be fine. The trucks are going to run, the food is going to be there, and I know that our operations team is solid. Where we wanted to put our investment and our focus was really making sure that together as a team, we were working towards who we want and need to be, sort of to meet the world where it is.
Kiera, are you finding a lot of your partners feel similarly, like putting more of a focus on diversity, equity, inclusion? Is that a post-COVID thing that we're going to see more of? I mean, it doesn't have to do with COVID, but just in the times that we're in.
Yeah, I hope so. It's been overwhelming, bittersweet, because you would hope that, before, the kind of social unrest last year, that people were already thinking about this, but it was almost night and day. I mean, like the next day, just many more people are reaching out. But social media has been really helpful in connecting with organizations across the country. The virtual nature of the work now has just opened up opportunities for, people, with small consultancies like mine. And, just giving the ability to find the right person for the job, so I've worked with companies who, couldn't find someone that fit their culture in the way that they wanted to, that are, actually, in the middle of, where, a lot of the civil unrest is happening. So in the Twin City area, I've had, multiple people reach out. So it's been rewarding in that way. And I hope that, I found it surprisingly easy to engage in conversations about race and identity virtually, like between these, screens. So, I hope that we continue to see the value of that, just to expand our reach, so that I can continue to make the impact that I want to make, and, to help companies, and, just being the right partner for them. So, yeah.
Absolutely. I'm going to get back into the partnership specifics, but just to everybody out there, we do have the chat box. We do see your comments. So thank you for the comments. We always appreciate more questions. But on the topic of choosing your partners, let's say you have identified somebody that you want to work with. Let's say it's a Kiera, or it's a Mia, it's a Lucy. And what's the next step? I mean, now what? What do you do? How do you start that conversation about ways that you can work together?
So I will say, in the effort to increase the diversity of partnerships and consultants that that you're working with, it's all about relationship building. To reach out to someone just because of their identity is not a good feeling for that person, and also, not necessarily the right person for the role. And so I think, I've mentioned social media before. I've seen the benefit of, following people, whether LinkedIn or, Twitter or Instagram, to see what they're about, commenting, engaging in dialogue with them, just to get to know each other, to build that trust so that when the opportunity does arise, you already know each other. And it's more authentic in that way. So I think that's a really good way to, avoid the trap of tokenizing. So I would say, that's for at least my industry. I think that's, a really, really great way to start.
Absolutely. And you talked about relationship building. So obviously we all know that things aren't perfect all the time. Sometimes things go wrong. Give us your advice on the best ways to maybe level set with your partner.
Be direct. You got to step out of your comfort zone if you're not comfortable with, I hate to say confrontation, but you've got to be honest, you've got to be direct, and you have to be timely. I know, I can think about a partnership that did not work well for us. The consultant was not a good fit for us, just could not understand our young people. We were trying to set up a new client information system, and they kept trying to fit us into a box of a product they already had. And our work did not fit into that box. And we had any number of meetings and conversations, and I finally just had to stop it and come to the realization that they were never going to get us, and they were never going to be able to produce what we wanted and what the organization needed. So that's where the timeliness comes. But I just had to end the relationship in an honest and direct manner.
Lucy, I see you shaking your head. I mean, do you have anything to add to that? Any time that you had to end a partnership? Why'd you do it? How did it go? Any lessons learned?
Yeah, I have had to do that. I think that we have had better success with partners where we have, as Mia has already said beautifully, been really clear about expectations, but we've also tried to sort of start small. So if there are ways that you can work with another partner that isn't necessarily something that you're committing to for the next 3 to 5 years, but you're committing to for 3 to 6 months, and sort of having baked in times to check in and debrief. I think that can help as you're sort of building that trust and thinking through that relationship, and if it feels right. I've had situations where I've been so committed to the mission of the organization and the work that the organization is doing, and also wondered if it's personality dynamics, sometimes between who the front, who has been sort of our relationship manager, if you will, and have had great success of being able to sort of say, might there be another person that I could connect with or talk to about this? But again, being able to sort of articulate and describe what would be most helpful. So thinking about not just what is not working in the partnership, but what you think would take for it to work, and being able to help describe that, I think is helpful.
Gotcha. You did say start small. Is it possible to have too many partners? I mean, when do you get to that point when you decide, all right, we've got enough people at the table, we're good?
Yeah, and that would probably, I wonder if Mia or Ashley or Kiera would want to comment on that before me, because I do think like we're kind of in that unusual place of sort of we run out of money, right? So our ability to partner is affected by sort of what resources we have available to offer. I think during the pandemic, what we really tried to do was think about how we could pivot any possible dollar to get out the door as quickly as we possibly could in an unrestricted way. Whether it was a savings on canceling an event and we had, some money that we would have spent on food, can we give that as a contribution? So we tried to sort of rethink all of our partnerships to be more hopefully impactful last year, but that isn't necessarily something that we can always do. So we have sort of that overall limitation, but I don't know if others would think about sort of a partnership limit in a different way.
Yeah, quickly before the others jump in, maybe this question is for you, Lucy. It is from our chat box. It's from Ellen Church. She wants to know, do you have internal purchasing principles or policies that aim to identify new partners on a regular interval? That could be to any of you, but I wanted to ask.
I mean, I would say that we do have a pretty, I think, a really tremendous supplier diversity commitment where we make sure that we are regularly going through kind of a procurement process that goes through a diversity kind of process as well, to be able to try, when possible, to prioritize women and minority-owned businesses. And there's a review process that happens so that all of our sort of contracting, it goes through a similar process that might be weighted differently, but that we're trying to pay attention to smaller businesses and minority-owned businesses. So I don't know if that speaks to exactly what the question had in mind, but I'd say that's one of our internal processes that.
Gotcha. Anybody want to speak to, the possible to have too many partners? Or Kiera, we can talk more about diversifying partnerships. That can kind of go hand in hand too.
Yeah, well, it's going to say that, I am at a stage where I'm trying to grow my business. And so I am having a hard time turning down work. But it comes down to, my bandwidth and, ability to maintain quality. So I am blessed enough to say I can now decide who I want to work with and, working on, moving things around in the back end so that I can work with more great organizations like LS. But on the topic of diversifying partners, whether it's, consultants or other businesses, organizations, I think the underlying goal is, it's leveling the playing field. It's I guess a moral case for wanting to, diversify partners. So giving access and opportunities is how we create equity and level the playing field. So we should want to do it for that reason. But also, diversifying partnerships, it lends, I'll just say like diversity of thought or diverse perspective. So it's not all, homogenous. And, what I understand about, diversity of thought is, especially specifically in problem solving approaches, it reduces risk. So, the more diverse your partners or in any stakeholder, including your employee base and your leadership are, the more innovative and the less costly mistakes you make. So, there's too many reasons to go that route.
Yeah, I know in our last Learning with Love and Ashley, I mean, you talked a lot about that. You're like, here I am, I'm a white woman, but I'm serving communities that I know don't all look like me. So I know that's a big part of what you do in looking for partners. I mean, it has to be.
Yeah, and so I think we experience, there's a lot in the last little segment that we just went through, and we sort of experience all of that at different levels, right? So our beneficiaries, the one thing about COVID, and I was saying this to somebody earlier today, somebody said, what do you think people are going to think about squarely because of COVID? What's going to be sort of the trend in the way we look at community or the world? And, I sort of automatically thought that, for most of us who are connected and engaged in our community for whatever reason, and with all good intention, the majority of folks in the world probably have not heard with any regularity the term or the classification disproportionately affected communities. And so I think there's an awareness now that, to Kiera's earlier point, perhaps shouldn't have come from the bizarre intersection of what last year was, but it did. And so I think there, as sort of a natural piece of what we're doing in terms of distributing food and trying to address hunger and public health and social service, if we're talking about our beneficiary diversity, it's baked in, it is there. As we start talking about our supplier diversity on our vendor side, we certainly look at where food is, where it's being grown, sold, retailed, harvested, what have you, and how to move it forward. Part of the work that we started in 2018 and are now really drilling down with Kiera here, from everything from the hiring process to the accessibility of our employment opportunities to the accessibility of understanding and getting educated about our work, making sure that that is not just available, but truly accessible. And when we talk about where things get really challenging and sort of that side of confrontation and how do we choose partners who are going to help us do that, nobody's ever told me that I was a wallflower, that I wasn't confrontational enough. But what I will say is that we've experienced sort of ill fit at every part of our work. It's been with past board members, it's been with vendors, who haven't respected our FRCs. We're a majority women organization. So if you have somebody who's making one of our FRCs feel unsafe or they're uncomfortable in a particular situation, that's where our team comes in. That's where relationship management comes in and is important. So you have to be willing to understand and look at all of the factors that go into making folks feel safe, be happy, stay committed, that will ultimately make you successful. And you just can't shy away from telling the truth.
Yeah, you mentioned board members. I think that brings up a whole nother thing. I mean, thinking to board members as partners, what do those of you working with boards of directors, I mean, what do you look for?
Mia, you want to jump in on that?
I was just unmuting. So a bunch of things. So I look for board members who have passion for our mission and the work that we do at RYI. That is really important. Diversity, again, we always ensure, we've got people of color, women of color on our board. And let me say, my board is small. There's only 8 of them. I look for people who have experience in nonprofit management, so that they understand the context in which I'm making decisions and my role as the leader of this nonprofit. And then, of course, you look for people who have expertise that I don't have, per se, in public relationships, in law, legal, in the legal realm. Well, I was going to say financial management, but I'm definitely a financial manager now in ways that I wasn't before. And I also look at, and my board knows this, and everyone, I don't want to be micromanaged. I want to be supported. I want to be questioned, but I don't want every decision I make to be questioned by my board of directors. I want them to trust me. This is where that relationship, all of us have talked about the importance of relationships. So while they are our governing body, they are my bosses. I call the president of my board boss. We have that relationship. We have that give and take. And that's why I adore my board of directors.
Yeah, it sounds like I want to work for you. You're direct, you've got honest communication, you've got a great board. I mean, can I apply?
Absolutely.
Anyone else care to weigh in on that? Or we are going to be wrapping up shortly. Any last words of wisdom? I mean, people are watching, choosing a business partner, your dream business partner.
I'll just say for the last piece, Mia, I can, there's so much to take away from what you just said. And, as a founder, I looked at everything backwards. I did everything backwards, and only now we're investing in certain things that probably should have been done right at the beginning. But it really was sort of this, let's respond to the need for as many years as we can get away with just focusing on urgent response before we actually have to build a company and move on from there. I think part of the work that I've been most interested in, our board is also small. Mia, we might be one less than you. They are my bosses. I prefer it that way. I miss having traditional employment with a traditional manager. And so I appreciate the managerial, not micromanagerial, but the managerial nature of our board. But one of the things that I'm most looking forward to working, not just with Kiera on, but with other executive directors in the space we're in, is making sure that we're avoiding sort of, Kiera, you mentioned tokenizing, and making sure that we are valuing anybody that we bring into the company, bring into the board. We've identified the needs, the actual sort of like acumen-based needs, and now making sure that these opportunities are not just available, but that people have access to them. I think one of the things we realized is our financial commitment was perhaps a barrier for folks to even inquire. And I think those are real signals to us to say, okay, is it important? No. Is it necessary? No. How do we move around this and say that diversity of thought, making sure that we are bringing in folks who are representing the communities that we serve, representing ideas and ideals that we want to work towards? How do we do that in a way that makes the most sense? And one of the frustrating parts for me to keep hearing from everyone, but it's really where we need to ground, is that it's a process, it takes time, and we want to make sure we're doing it the right way, and we're not, to take that word again, tokenizing, and just saying, let's do it for the sake of doing it. And so that's really where we are and what we're looking forward at every level, our board of directors, our culinary board, and then certainly our Friends Advisory Board.
Absolutely. Well, Ellen Church on the top chat box, she says, great point. I agree. All great points made tonight. Really a great conversation. And I hope everyone out there listening at home learned something, because that really is our goal here. Thank you, Mia, Lucy, Kiera, and Ashley. And thank you for everyone who is joining us. Of course, if you kicked in a question that wasn't addressed tonight, or maybe you're just like wrapping up with this, you're at home, you have a question that comes to mind, we do want to hear from you. If there's something you'd like us to cover, an idea for a future Learning with Lovin session, you'll be receiving an email over the coming days that will ask for your feedback and your ideas. We are all ears, of course. We can't wait to hear from you, and just keep this conversation going. Now, remember that Learning with Lovin is a series, and our next session will be held on June 29th. Yes, in the summer, it is approaching. I can feel it. And it's focusing on women in leadership. I cannot wait for this one. There's a link in the chat box to register for that free session. It is free, or you can head over to lovinspoonfulsinc.org to read more about it. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Again, thank you to the panelists. I learned a lot. I hope you did too. Have a great night and go enjoy the weather.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.